guests present here for the concluding day of the 5-day faculty development program on teaching, learning, and research with AI in language studies. I am really dumb to speak anything before the literary luminary sitting here before us, Professor Sudha Rai. I extend a very hearty welcome to Professor Sudha Rai for being here today with us for the faculty development program and for sharing her expertise with all of us. So I would simply say that without any further ado and any formal introductions, I would request Professor Deepa Chakrabarti for the convener's address.
Thank you very much. So once again, a warm welcome to all online participants. I find 50. It has to be 100. Yes, in a while. So maybe by the time I speak, rest will join. It's very important. Today's session is a culminating session. It's a very important session. And literature, culture, civilization, and AI's role. Professor Sudha Rai is known to us for a long time. Amity School of Languages has a long association with Professor Sudha Rai. And I remember that it was during a conclave of eco-literature, eco-lit conclave, that we called her. It was an extremely enlightening session. After that, in various webinars and I think online, we called her also to talk on contemporary literary theories. And it was such a learning session for every scholar, every youngster, every teacher present. So you can understand the importance of the presence of such a big literary personality amongst us. It's very important that all of us, without mobile and everything, should concentrate on what she says. It's very important. Okay, so just to tell, because Professor Sudha Rai has come to us after a gap of 8 years, so many things happened in between. Infrastructurally, of course, you have seen the changes, new buildings coming up. We have around 4,500 students. Research scholars number also increasing in a very big manner. The department has research possibility in 5 languages, of course English, but also French, German, Spanish also are being added very recently. And we got a very high demand in foreign languages as well. We have already some languages that our students learn from basic semester, first semester onwards, French, German, Spanish, Mandarin. We are now adding Japanese. So these are the changes in the department. The department has grown, of course. Now 15 faculty members are there. And I was telling ma'am ki next session, we will be requiring at least 4 faculty members will be joining us. So it is in a growing mode, that much I can tell you. And my fortunate thing that I had is that I saw it growing. 2010 onwards, and today 2026, I have been a very silent observer and growing with the department and adding many things, whatever is necessary. But looking at the other departments also, very recently, pharmacy we have physiotherapy, many other engineering, we were very strong from the for a long time. So is business management. Then we have psychology, we have communications, right? Almost 60 programs, ma'am, 60 plus programs. And the university has this possibility of minor degree. So major, yes, but minor you can have from any other department, provided you earn 15 credits, be it cyber security, be it psychology, be it management. Our literature student can do. Again, an engineering student can do literature and have a minor degree in literature. So these are things that are very important. Foreign language already ma'am knows, but also we have two more departments contributing to the holistic growth of the students. One is behavioral science, IBAS, Amity Institute of Behavioral Science, contributing to that. So each and every student of the university has to do teamwork, workshop, etc., and also communication skill. These are three things that they do. So that's it. There are many more things, but maybe another time because we are impatient and truly so. We want to listen to ma'am. A big round of applause for ma'am. And ma'am's CV will be read by, ma'am's bio note will be read by Dr. Parul Mishra. So just one more minute, all participants, and we start with ma'am's session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deepama. It's always a privilege to say a few words for Professor Sudha Rai. So without much ado, I am Parul Mishra. Will be sharing a quick introduction about Professor Sudha. So Professor Sudha Rai is a former head of the Department of English and Dean of the Faculty of Arts at the University of Rajasthan, Jaipur. A gold medalist postgraduate from Bangalore University. She holds qualifications from the CIEFL. Then beginning her teaching career in 1979 at Banasthali Vidyapeeth, she joined the University of Rajasthan in 1993, where she supervised 16 MPhil and 19 PhD theses. Her academic journey includes prestigious fellowships, the Australia-India Council Senior Fellowship, 2008, a visiting research professorship at Paul Valley University, France, 2010, and an ICSSR Senior Research Fellowship, 2013, focusing on disability studies in Indian literature and film. From 2016 to 2018, she served as professor and head at Manipal University, Jaipur, helping design a liberal arts program. She has been a NAC assessor, HRDC resource person, and continues as a subject expert and reviewer for Muse India. Her publications include books on V.S. Naipaul, diaspora, and a co-edited volume of Indian cinema and feminism. In September 2025, she received the Mala Mathur Memorial Lifetime Achievement Award in Education. The list is quite long, but since we are a bit short of time, I would like to invite Professor Sudha Rai, madam, for the reports. Why this briefed it? Otherwise, there's a long list. Mala Mathur Award for ma'am. Can we? Thank you. To be with all of you. The very concluding day of your FPP, and that itself is a historic milestone which you have. All of you who have been, all of us who have been in the program, including myself, know that things roll on. There is much to be collected, much to be reflected on. And at the very conclusion, one finds that this is a good thing, left with a whole set of unanswered questions. I imagine that those of you who have already familiarized yourselves with the role of AI, the work that is going on in terms of researchers, the way in which it allows us to network across different disciplines, cultures, countries, and then take certain decisions
on what one's own connection is going to be with this new tool that has suddenly opened itself up to us, created by humans, responsive to humans, but then carrying on to a certain extent its own agency. So we're dealing with a number of questions that I would like to open up here. And though the FTP is also for educators in language, in the language. But I imagine that the concerns that I have will also be very interesting to most of you gathered here, because we are on the threshold of an explosion. The paradigm is shifting. We are not quite ready for it. There are gaps in our understanding, and there is a whole range of books that are coming out, which look at how AI is impacting on this generation and the generations to come. So what we have in hand here today to reflect on, to ponder over, is the ramifications of that. It's not audible. If I'm audible, I'll carry on without the mic, otherwise I'll fail. No, but we have online participants now. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Okay. So let me also extend my welcome to everyone who is attending this FDP online. We always tend to, look at what is before us. And I also became aware that there are so many listeners, and thank you for listening from wherever you are. I thought I would begin by trying to look at what it is as language teachers. Some of you may be scholars on the brink, on the threshold of taking up your own employment. Okay. That's fine. Yeah, thank you. Next. So redefining then, why are we speaking about redefining, right? Every decade or so, or every 2 decades or so, there comes a point where we ask ourselves, how were we using language in our classrooms? And what were some of those limitations in the approaches that we had engaged in? So if you look at certain paradigm shifts that have taken place in language teaching, and I think many of you would be interested in knowing that approximately from the 1960s onwards, we entered into the use of technology, right? We had language labs set up, but they were all working with recorded tapes. The inputs were always fixed. The interactions amongst classrooms were not varied, and they could not be extended. So if we move on from the 1960s, and where we find that there was primarily rote learning, right? The grammar translation method had given way to other methods, but even these methods, when they were used in the language lab, focused more on behavior. So what was student behavior like? Could we teach them the drills? Could we develop in them habits of language use by mimicking the exact kind of knowledge that we wanted them to relate to? So we were at a position, a juncture, where it looked as if language behavior could be modeled, but modeled in a way which was primarily concerned with, could we teach them to pick up a certain habit? And therefore, the way in which creativity could enter into this domain had not been perhaps completely visualized. When we enter into CLT, or communicative language teaching, we find that there has been a major paradigm shift. And this has happened because, as Henry Widdowson and others brought into focus through their writings, language as communication. Language belongs within the social sphere. It needs to be mastered in terms of its social uses. And if it has to be effectively communicative, then all the nuances of dialogues, context, addresser, addressee, cultural situations, each of these components needs to be imbibed and addressed. So when we look at communicative language teaching, then we find that across languages, whether within this country, the revolution may have come a little later, but across languages, there was the understanding that only grammar, only drills, only aspects which looked at a limited sphere of interaction would not really suffice. So you would have heard various kinds of terms, native speaker competence, right? And native speaker competence can be understood and absorbed only after you have real life situations that come into play. So I'm tracing what appear to be fairly basic aspects of the evolution of language teaching. And let us also observe that these evolutions in cycles take place in relation to various theories, linguistic theories. There was structuralism. Then we moved on, we moved into communicative language theory. So there was always a philosophy that backed the pedagogy. There was a theory that went into how the teacher-student relationship needs to be structured. We move on a little further, and communicative language teaching resulted in various kinds of branches, right? And the awareness was that we need to situate the learner. The learner needs to be situated, but how? The question was how, in the absence of native speakers, which may also be the truth today for some of you who are learning foreign languages or some of you who are teaching foreign languages, right? So everywhere, this gap needed to be addressed. As we moved on, we find that 1990s onwards, then you have communicative assisted language learning, and this brought in other levels of importance. So let me just briefly look at, if I were to make a comment on some of those slides that I've been looking at so far. So I mentioned that we move to the audiolingual method, the learner listens, the learner produces, all right? And all these were aspects of the theory of behaviorism. So let's keep in mind that psychology has fueled so many of the researches that have come to us in language education. And we also find that the audio tapes used in language labs, as I said, they worked very well. There was a great deal of excitement. Expensive language labs were set up. But as many of us realized when we went around some labs in the country, the experiments stopped there. Very often, it could not really be sustained. And it could not be sustained because the whole business of getting further, updating equipment, updating the reels and the tapes that are required. So there are various kinds of situations across the country that we observe. Now, when we come to communicative computer-assisted, language teaching, then you find that we are entering into the world of multimedia. And obviously, it's very exciting for us as learners because you have the videos, you have the audio, right? You have the tasks, you have the problem solving. And we move through some of these tasks that are set for us. And it also allows us that if there is remote communication, I'm here as the teacher, you are there as the learner. So you are there as the teachers and I'm here as the learner. So the trajectory, the crisscross that could happen was hugely facilitated by computer-assisted language learning. And then we are moving on further to look at what happens in digitally enhanced language learning. Because what we have here now is something that is much more powerful. Most of you are familiar with the word immersive. And why do we speak about immersive? Would you like to comment on immersive? Somebody? Yes, please.
It's a real format. It gives a development and work. It's like I'm from journalism department. So immersive journalism is the emerging field where the reporters are going to report data. They just promote in documentary form and documented form and everything is going to be
Yes, So reality then, thank you very much, reality then becomes very real because you are placed in a situation where you feel that you are the actor, you are the participant, you have the agency, you begin to understand the various components. So immersive is a very important part of how we are moved out of the closed walls of the classroom, out of the static nature of the language lab, in which, yes, of course, the instructor moves between the rows up and down, looking at how you are performing in your exercises. But yet there's a level of, if I can use that word, stagnancy, right? The environment is still still. I would like to mention something which may perhaps evoke nostalgia in some of you if you have read this text. 1945, one of our country's leading writers in English, R.K. Narayan, brought out his work called The English Teacher. Right. Now, I was leafing through those pages and I realized, look at the situation, look at the advances. What was that classroom? We have a character there, Krishna, and he is put into as a young lecturer to teach in Albert Mission College. He doesn't have a clue about how to connect with the students. No resources of the kind we have today. Yes. And the students themselves come from probably disadvantaged backgrounds too, and they are least interested. They are not interested in engaging with this teacher who doesn't have the confidence himself. And the method adopted there is, all right, learn, mug up, rote learning, move into the examination mode. That is it, straight line, right? And when I look back at that situation, and in fact, I set a task for myself that let me see what would AI do if I gave it the task of realign, remodel this whole scenario with what is happening through AI. And you will find that when you suggest such creative exercises, you'll be able to do a comparison and contrast, which is really hugely a learning experience because you find then so much has changed, isn't it? From the screens that we have, from the mobiles to which we connect. And not only that, there are various other aspects also where we feel that, well, so much is happening and we are connected all over. So in fact, so much can become too much as well. So when we look at computer assisted language learning and digital resources, then we are moving into a zone where there is unlimited possibility of connection. But then the question comes as to, I'm going to, in fact, let me just explain and orient you towards what it is that interested me. I've been carrying out some research on this particular aspect very recently, and also made another presentation just about a month ago on this aspect of research, which really has, got me excited, which is, if we are the humans, we are supposed to know our emotions. We are supposed to deal in emotions, right? If AI is the cognitive tool and we are the humans, well, is there absolutely clear that cognition belongs to one party and emotion to the other, or nothing like that? So in order to pick up that, I have been moving towards various theories pertaining to emotion. Now, as we know, emotion comes into management theory, it comes into classrooms, it comes into spirituality, right? So everywhere we find that we are, in fact, not as observant enough about emotions. Now, the listeners, offline and online, right? Now, how much do I know about your emotions? I'm speaking, okay? I'm conjecturing. But the classroom of today needs to, as I firmly believe, look very closely at what is happening with emotions. And the most leading aspects of pedagogy today have taken up this missing link, this huge gap in favoring cognition rather than emotion. And what happens when we favor cognition exclusively? We find that we may be losing students. We may be losing the impetus that can come So if we look at the layers of emotion, which are very clear to us, sometimes there is a sudden surge of emotion, right? There is excitement. This is the physiological layer. And then we can move into the cognitive layer where I actually reflect on, there is an appraisal of what is the kind of emotion that I am experiencing. So emotions are not only instinctive, right? And recent theory says that there is very complex layers of cognition and emotion working together. And if we can carry across those insights into our classrooms and connect it with what AI proposes to do and what we propose to do with AI, then there is a kind of a quantum leap that we will be making in the direction of serving our students better, learning better, because we are all, the outline of this FDP says language educators. And it says educators and learners. I really like that. There is no hierarchy. We are all educators, sometimes self-educators, we are all learners, and sometimes we're teaching in various forums, offline and online. Thirdly, there is the behavioral layer, which is somewhat clear to us, right? But not always, because behavior and emotion and facial expressions can also be masked. So when we have a group of students, how do we read? Do we read their facial expression? If they're very still, what really is going on? Is it withdrawal? Is it indifference? Is it concentration? These are questions we need to ask ourselves, because primarily the whole enterprise of education is in seeing that there is adequate transmission, adequate churning of that self, of that identity, which then we can move into stronger outcomes. Okay. Of course, there's the social layer, right? Now, if I am born in India, and therefore my behavior is conditioned. I can reach out, I can make appeals in certain way. There are acts of rejoicing, there are acts of mourning. All of them come through along with the behavior layer, something that has been taught. So there's a transmission from the past. To what extent we pick that up? I particularly drawing attention to the social layer and the behavioral layer, because those of us who are leading with multicultural classrooms, dealing with a lot of diversity, cultural diversity, we need to be aware that those behavioral dimensions and expression, the voicing of certain requirements also may come through in very different ways, may also remain unvoiced. So very basic understanding of that emotion is a multi-layered process. It is not just to be read as a spontaneous release of emotion where there is the target or there is the object and I am the subject. There's so much more that we need to look into. Everybody here would have read Daniel Goleman's Emotional Intelligence, right? A work that really went into so many editions and resulted in a plethora of researches, because finally somebody seemed to have made an entry into a gap. Now, in his model, Daniel Goleman, you'll notice, speaks about these very 5 major components. And we're looking at his psychological theory because what you and I are dealing with is actually a student who is not a mere receptacle, but there are layers. So when I know my internal states, I am self-aware. That is also an emotion being processed. When I regulate myself, I manage my impulses and my resources, again, I'm in contact with an intelligence, but that intelligence is seeded by emotion. He speaks about motivation, where he says that as long as we are passionate, let's say, about attending a lecture, about finding a book in the library, about taking a trip abroad, about meeting a friend whom one had not met for the last 10 years, these emotions motivate, and then they take us in the direction of growth. So within classroom interactions, if we keep in mind that, well, we need to activate emotional intelligence. How we do it is up to the strategies that all of you as teachers can put into place. There's empathy. Our classrooms need to look closely at whether there is empathy. What is happening, right? Sometimes you find that there is divisiveness. So what does the teacher do then? What kind of reflection can be encouraged? There are social skills. Not all of us have the social skills. We all know that even in this country, if you look at English language education, then there's a great diversity of the socioeconomic background, the schools to which the learners went. And therefore, you find that there are ways in which we wait for responses, but those responses don't come. The whole exercise of looking closely at emotion, let me just repeat, is in order to understand the track on which we are moving towards. And the track is artificial intelligence. But preceding that, I felt it was important to look a little bit into the theory, the history of language teaching, and then to look at a very important domain, which is the psychological domain of emotion, but not necessarily only through psychology, because you will find that the neurosciences have entered into this area with more than a will, right? Any number of researches going on about what is the connection between the brain, which part of the brain, how does emotion work, okay? And as you can see here, the emotional brain responds to an event more quickly than the thinking brain. So here is the behavioral pattern then. And all the time, if you're looking at, I'm not saying don't look at dictionaries, of course we need to look at dictionaries, but we also need to look closely at connotations, right? We need to understand that language has many layers. In fact, there was one quotation, which probably I should bring to your notice right here.
ध्रुव हाँ ध्रुव गुड आफ्टरनून बोलो बोलो अच्छा ठीक है चेक करता हूँ मैं
Now let's look closely because we are moving to the area of natural language processing, and artificial intelligence. The quotation from Jan Hattick, which came out in 2005, particularly appealed to me, which says natural language is neither a physical nor a mathematical system. With deterministic behavior, it remains a social phenomenon that is very difficult to handle automatically and explicitly, and therefore by computers, regardless of the method used. So processing is not something that is going to happen in very easy ways. Okay. So having looked into Daniel Goleman's model, let's see what Richard Lazarus said. Now you see a number of convergences happening because the psychologists now are all moving in the direction of saying that we need to interpret, we do interpret emotion. It's not as if the release of emotion stops right there. So in this work, emotional adaptation, and these are all coming up in the last quarter century, most of these works and some even more recently. Emotions are organized psychophysiological reactions to ongoing relationships with the environment. So I have a positive vibe coming from somebody, my emotion changes. I have a negative hypercritical vibe coming from another party, and my emotion fluctuates and changes. So it's not as if emotions are steady. They can be constructed, they can be modulated, they can be deflected, or to say that the cognitive element is also very crucially working with the emotional dimension. And emotions help individuals to challenges and opportunities in their environment, as Lazarus said. So very often you see what used to happen in many classrooms was that there was a suppression of emotion, right? And there were two words which I listened to while listening to one of the talks on this area. One was autocratic, right? So we don't need an autocratic classroom. We can accept an authoritative classroom, autocratic and so look at the difference then, because in an autocratic classroom, it's very likely that your own emotions will not be allowed to have free flow. In an authoritative classroom, there is control on the part of the educator, but there is also acceptance of whatever it is that points of view that are coming in. So Lazarus was the second one. And then I would really like many of you to at least flip through one or two books by Lisa Barrett. And she is still lecturing widely. She is still very visible. You will find her. And this work, How Emotions Are Made. Now, that made me stop in my tracks. Are emotions made? Manufacturing emotions. Does that mean that emotions can be faked? What does it mean? Right? So, in her theory of constructed emotion, she points out that all of us have the capacity that when we receive the inputs which affect us in a bodily way, but then there's the brain which also tries to pick up. Let me just say very well. We'll take one example, right? Supposing there is the experience of failure in an examination, right? Now that is there as a residue in my brain. And the second time I need to take an examination, does that residue leave me? But can I construct another kind of emotion? That is possible, right? Positive psychology is all about how we can manage and change the direction of our emotions. And Lisa Barrett also speaks about how culture and language influence. So they're looking closely at what are the emotions that are in the learner. It may be that there is happiness, there is fear, there is pride. So there may be the positive side of emotions, there may be the negative side of emotions. So after we go through a process where I compare it with my past memory, the second point on brain prediction, then we move on and we look at the way in which cultural norms can also govern the emotions and can also form another layer through which we are able to construct or to refuse to construct further emotions. So look at, you see all the circles and the ripples that are created in this kind of theory. So emotion construction, bodily sensations, concepts and meanings, context and memory, right? But the point that she makes is that there is ample room for reappraisal to change the emotion. So if you have the agency to construct the emotion, you also have the agency to change the emotion and result in a new emotion. So it's very interesting work is going on in the neurosciences, primarily because language educators have realized that sometimes there are more failures than successes in their classrooms. All of us have gone through that. I meet, new entrants to the profession also, and they say, but they simply refuse to respond. Students simply refuse to respond. Now, who are they to blame for that? Have we brought across, have we generated enough of creative text? Right? What is the nature of the stimulus that we provide? What is the nature of the emotion as mentors that we bring into the classroom? There's much to be done in the area of language teaching. And it is a very exciting field, chock full of researchers, thousands of tomes that have been produced, case studies, experiments in Africa, India, Canada, New Zealand, world over. But bound by the fact that somehow, if we are losing students, we need to look more closely at what is happening within their inner world of emotions. Okay, now I also believe that many of you will be involved in curriculum design, right, as educators. And curriculum design, not necessarily as a member of a board of studies, but even in a simple way, when you make a lesson plan, a weekly lesson plan, a daily lesson plan, right? What do we need to design? So there is now the advances in theory which says we need to design for emotion. Of course, you may tell me that, ma'am, there is a fixed syllabus. It is given to us semester-wide. We have to cover the syllabus. But within that, don't you think that there are ample opportunities for us to provide the support? So if you look closely at this slide, then you find that foundations of support, what do we need to do with students? Engagement, primarily, right? The why of learning. We have to talk to them. I'm speaking to you today about something that I am passionate about, the convergence of emotion and cognition. You need to speak to students in the same way. We all need to. Why are we learning, right? And then we move towards the representation, the what of learning. So which means you look at the content, be careful to screen the content. Not everything can be taught, but small segments, bite-sized pieces, right, can be introduced. We need to also work through smaller samples in depth. Because very often, if students are given a full-length novel, you see 300 to 400 pages, or a very complicated poem that belongs to a much earlier era, 17th century, 18th century, historical studies are important, but not outright. So constantly checking for the emotional graph of students, I believe, is something that we can carry out. Action and expression, right? So how are we learning? How are we learning? Is there participation? Not just in participation in the way in which yes or no, but opinion seeking, opinion rendering. Does my classroom allow for all these aspects to emerge? So if you look at the top of the table, you'll find those four terms in blue: relevance, autonomy. We need to provide autonomy to learners, competence, how are they growing through this strategy that we are adopting, and do they experience a sense of connectedness or belonging, right? I'm going to run through these words repeatedly because when we come to AI, then I'm going to ask all of you this question. All those who have used various models of AI, that is there a sense of belonging, right? So we're looking here at the human endeavor is to transform the classroom, of course, by using resources, of course, by bringing in new content, new strategies, but can a sense of belonging be created? This is the fundamental research question, the fundamental philosophical question also, that's troubling so many scientists world over and researchers. You're familiar with this term, academic emotions, right? I was not very familiar with it, but as I went on to read more researches in this area, academic emotions are those emotions that any learner experiences while carrying out academic activities of learning. Okay. It may be taking a test or an examination. It may be making a PowerPoint presentation. It may be taking part in a debate of some kind or the other. It may be a piece of creative writing, also within the boundaries of the academic, a task, an assignment given. So this is a very important theory, Reinhard Beckmann, German, and he came up with this theory of control value theory of academic emotions. Now, strange, isn't it? Academic emotions, because normally the academic has students running in the opposite direction, some of them, because they say, well, it's so dry. The syllabus is so dry, right? So how do we then approach it? Now, Beckmann's theory was that within these learning situations, there can be a range that we just looked at from the negative to the positive. So there can be great enjoyment, or there may be the reverse, there may be anxiety. I can't even follow what is going on. This is the third class on that topic, but I simply don't understand what the theory is about. Anxiety, boredom, what's this hasn't touched me at all, has touched neither my emotions nor my mind. So I'm in that position, right? Now, academic emotions then, now these are all new terminology, let's put it that way, because we need to look at how research has progressed and the way in which it impacts academic performance also. So there are aspects of the brain, attention, memory, motivation and effort, study strategies, influences. So can we control? Because we realize if something is valuable, then we are able to exercise control over that. So once we come into values, you will find that values are being discussed in many educational documents, including the NEP 2020. Values are important, human values, ethics. There's a whole discourse happening now, perhaps because that other tested pathways have not really succeeded. So we're looking at values and ethics, and values again brings us to the domain. For some of us, it's Indian, for the other, it's French, for the other, it's German. So what are these values? What are the academic values? Academic values coming from Guru-Shishya relationship? Is that viable? Is that workable? Or is it something else that is needed at this juncture? And what happens when a machine enters into the discourse? Right? What happens to academic emotions? Just hold that question, keep it there for reflection. And anybody wants to intervene at this point, you're most welcome to. Another very important concept is that of affective pedagogy, which actually absorbs all that I have been speaking to you about now. Affective pedagogy, affective learning, right? And affect, as we all know, has to do with emotions. It has to do with emotions, right? So in affective pedagogy, in the previous slide, we also looked at engagement, we looked at connectedness, we looked at belonging. Right? So if we have learners who are emotionally engaged through tasks, through dialogues, you will suggest many, many more ways in which you have engaged your learner, right? And once one is emotionally engaged, that look, this topic is interesting, tough but interesting, then our learners are going to move in the direction of stronger motivation. Maybe they'll go back, they'll pick up a web resource, learn a little more about this thinker. Who is this person? Okay. Positive classroom climate, all of this goes into the affective domain. Engagement and participation. It looks as if they are mere words on the page or on the screen, but it is for the instructor, the educator to work as, we've heard these terms, as facilitators, as collaborators. So the whole scenario is changing now for engagement, right? The hierarchical is being dispelled. We don't believe in the hierarchical because then we get into the autocratic mode. And especially when most young students, and the youngest of them also, are using web resources and social media so freely, where is the question of hierarchy? Wisdom, yes, wisdom gained through experience. That is there on one side. But in terms of innovation, we have to look to younger people, to much younger people in terms of innovation. So that is the emotion that drives innovation, the emotion that drives a startup. All of this is important, and it is these models that we need to bring into our classroom. Okay. Yeah. Not visible earlier. Good. Yeah. I think he's adjusting the
Inside me closer.
How are we doing with time, Dr. Deepa?
It's actually good.
Okay, we have another.
Something which I
20
don't
minutes.
bother actually.
Okay, let me proceed. And then you will send me a little slip and I will stop at that point. Okay. So, now come to, we all went through the COVID. We moved into the acceptance, the need for online learning mode, right? What happened to emotions, all of you as teachers or as learners? What did you experience when you went into the online mode? Was it a sense of the positive emotional factors coming in that, all right, here is somebody there, online activities and tasks are being generated for me, and I can, do them in the way in which I like, at my own time, at my own convenience. Okay, so there was a certain sense of freedom to deal with learning, right? And also there was access. There was also access. Yes.
Disconnect, emotional disconnect.
That's where we're moving towards. But there were challenges, as you rightly said, the emotional disconnect, because where is this teacher who, appears sometimes like a voice from the sky, right? And beyond that, how much I need to ask more, I need to know more. Can I do that? So these were the negative emotional challenges which have been plotted here. And as you will see, so many researches are going on. Educators' emotions involved in the transition to online teaching in higher education. Every piece of learning, teaching is being thrashed out. And what I wish to suggest is that you have very valuable material for research from your own classrooms. You have heard, I'm sure, of CCR, classroom-centered research. Pick up your own experiences over the last 2 years, over the last 5 years, either as learners or as educators, as teachers, and see how much you'll be able to. Today we speak about, there are these technical terms, data mining, right? So we are mining data for what purposes? Because we need to pass on the benefits of experiments that have been carried out, that have either failed or have succeeded, or are being rethought, being redefined. So keep that in mind. And some strategies suggested here. How do we foster emotional engagement? You all have done this already. Online learning communities, discussions, group tasks, right? Constructive feedback, emotional encouragement. And there is just that one line there which says, when online environments support positive emotion, students show greater engagement, deeper understanding, and improved learning outcomes. So these are experiences, and these experiences have been enhanced now because there's greater ability now to connect with groups remotely and with teachers also remotely, the conferences that we all attend, right? There is a certain sense that, there is not much discussion. In a physical conference, as you know, there is a face-to-face interaction. So much that happens in terms of cultural exchange, in terms of emotional exchange also, which is motivating. That cannot happen in very large online conferences. So something gained, something lost. Right? I'm coming to something that is very dear to me, of course, because I've been speaking about literature resources for emotional engagement. And I think each one of you would have experienced that when you have a poem that comes up and you read those few lines, there is an experience that happens, an emotion that is likely to be released, and motivation to understand yourself. We looked at Goleman's 5 components. There was self-awareness there. And poetry can be instrumental in releasing those emotions where you become self-aware. So a number of literature resources are available World Wide Web. I don't need to point them out to you. But why is it that poetry particularly, we are not referring to entire stretches of 1,000 lines of epic, Milton's Paradise Lost? No. But we are looking at smaller segments, as I said. And what poetry does is to bring in semantic simulation. So I actually experienced the meaning of something. I do not know what it is like to be a soldier, a foot soldier. If you go back to poetry of the First and Second World War, I do not know what it means to be buried away from one's home turf, home ground. But these experiences actually are created within my mind through the emotion of the voice. So we have prosodic simulation where there is sound and rhythm, right? Sound patterns, and these sound patterns are evoking emotions. And I can also experience a poem in its holistic form, in its holistic nature. So meaning, sound, and the reader's experience come together. I'm coming to my last slide, all right? Because I need to also, having taken this journey with you of emotions and learner engagement and educators' responsibility, let's see what it is that AI is doing. If some of you have listened to those YouTube lectures also brought out by Oxford University Press, there are very interesting dialogues that take place on the impact of AI on our present day classroom. What is the present impact? What is the future impact likely to be? I'll give you some more details as we proceed. Okay. So, what has AI given us then? I can open, I get into ChatGPT or AI, and immediately there's somebody who's working a little patiently with me, very rapidly, high speed, but yet willing to go. And if I say, well, this doesn't make any sense, can you please simplify it? I get another draft, I get another model. So the shift, the paradigm shift that I spoke of from rote learning, memorization to the present where we are is in the direction of giving the advantage to learners of personalized instruction. I can create different kinds of curricula. I can create different kinds of corrections. There is an app called Elsa Speak, English Language Speaking Assistant, which works with you as an individual learner, which corrects your, not just your grammatical errors, not just your pronunciation, but tells you how you are going to grow in fluency. Another very interesting term that I listened to in terms of comparison and contrast, we have been speaking to our students about acquiring fluency, which is what communicative language teaching also did. But today, with the AI model, we are trying to move in the direction of gaining mastery, right? So, how do we gain that mastery for ourselves and for our learners? So, I'm sure that you'll be able to look through this and to see that there are advantages, the current potential of AI, but there are challenges also in terms of many aspects which may have already been discussed, that whatever data I give may be under surveillance, right? It may not necessarily be private. And there may be a stereotypical bias. Western culture in the AI may already have extracted data which looks pejoratively at human subjects from the other side, from the third world countries, from the post-colonial countries. So these are aspects of culture and race and identity which we need to guard against. But the positive aspect is that now the humans are teaching AI. If you look at the employment offers on LinkedIn, I've just been doing it out of interest in this research. What do you find? Every language in India, for accent, for pronunciation, for cultural dialogues and connection, right? You will also find that there are AI needs to be tutored also on aspects of gender. So look at the emotional dimensions coming in now, the cognitive and the emotional, because AI cannot fail, and AI is failing. AI makes errors. So who is going to tutor AI? Once again, human beings are brought in to work with AI to clean up some of these problems and issues, blunders that AI can also make. But yet there is a very powerful tool available. I haven't yet introduced the word multimodal because I thought it would be very familiar to all of you since you mentioned immersive. So multimodal will give you all aspects, all modalities, video, audio, the face, the text, all of them will be working together. So if we need to work with AI, we also need to be very clear that AI in the classroom has advantages, right? But I'm picking up this phrase that is already in parlance in research, which is we always need to have, along with AI, a human in the loop. So let's keep in mind that we do need a human in the loop. I've just spoken to you briefly about some ideas. I don't know if we have time for questions. I hope there will be a few minutes for questions. If there are, then we'll get them. Thank you very much.
through the video.
Okay.
And from there only, if you want to, you can sit.
Maybe I'll see the chat box if something is there.
In fact, this morning I was talking to one of the colleagues, Dr. Manoj. Is he there?
Yes, ma'am.
And I was talking about when I was in class 4, I had a teacher, and class teacher. She would tell that whatever dolls, whatever, kind of, for boys it is always stars, those models that they like, they can bring in the classroom. So we used to bring our first 5-7 days to sort of push up, like everybody bring whatever you like and put it in the classroom as a decorative piece. It's yours and you belong to us, kind of thing. And every birthday, she would give a calendar with best wishes, love, and she would give us. We used to be so fond of her. And what happened at one time, exam was going on, we were all in our homes, and suddenly we saw, I myself, I remember this, the morning I was telling, the teacher came to us, to me, and suddenly I said, why is ma'am there? And she brought a calendar. She said, Deepa, this was your calendar and you left it in the classroom. So I got it. I mean, that kind of, connect with the teacher, that is all to, to grow this sense of belonging. And once you have this sense of belonging and attachment, learning automatically flows. You will be curious. You will come with your troubles, your problems to the teacher. So autocratic classroom, yes, but I don't say autocratic. You said that authoritative. Control of the teacher should be there, but love, emotion should be the parameters to create a bridge, to build a bridge between teacher and student. It's very much important today because in AI, system, people are automatically becoming machines. Two people sitting side by side, reading AI messages and not talking to each other. So emotion is very important, and you rightly pointed out.
Yeah. You see, picking up from this small, beautiful example that you just shared, the sense of, reaching out to connect, which is also important. And if you look at many of the researches on AI that are now underway, right, ongoing, then you'll find that there are terms coming up like spirituality, like soul. I already mentioned values to you. So we are moving in a new, I would think, a very strong evolutionary direction where we are trying to see that AI has to benefit, be easily accessible, has to serve, and therefore we need to become teachers to AI to share our own problems within the classroom, to be critical of AI, not to accept something that it is served to us and it looks so amazing as the processed, I would say, processed content within quotes, within inverted commas, because the processing has happened very rapidly. Right? Now, the videos that I mentioned, Oxford University Press videos, ELT, talking ELT, you'll find them. And you'll find that the real concern here again is that we are responsible for learning, our own learning. We are entitled to AI as users of AI, but we are speaking constantly about responsible and ethical use of AI, which will come up also. I'm sure that the Honorable Dean who is here will be speaking to you about research. So I did not venture into that area in the time that was available. But there are many more pathways and possibilities that AI has opened up.
I think right now we move over to Sir. So that was
If any
anyone has questions or maybe
It can be taken at any
questions on whatever ma'am presented, you may share. Or
at the end.
at the end we can do, okay. Maybe I can look in the chat box once if
Yeah.
there are any questions.
Yes. I don't think
No,
there's
there is
anything
nothing.
that-
Nothing in the chat box. Thank you, ma'am.
We can have nine people or whatever.
So thank you so much, Professor Rai, for such an enriching and intellectual session, I would say. Listening to you always seems like as if we are reading a book. That way. So yeah, without any further ado, I would request Professor Parul Mishra to please come over and share some important milestones of Professor Vinay Sharma, our Dean Research. And followed by that, we will have the next session for the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gunja. For Professor Sharma, he's a distinguished academician with over 36 years of experience in teaching and research. He has held prestigious positions, including Associate Professor at IIT Roorkee and Dean and Head of Department at Banasthali Vidyapith. Currently, he serves as Dean Research and Director at Amity Institute of Biotechnology, Amity University, Rajasthan. With over 400 research publications under supervision of 79 PhD scholars, Professor Sharma has made globally recognized contributions. He has an H index of 49, I-10 index of 194, with over 10,000 citations. He is a fellow of National Academy of Sciences, Biotechnology, Research Society, and Indian Botanical Society, besides many other awards and recognitions. In addition to over 150 invited lectures in India and abroad, Professor Sharma has also been a visiting professor in Germany, USA, Hungary, China, and Japan. His research interests include plant stress biology, plant biotechnology and informatics, and nanobiotechnology in crop stress management. We are honored to have you, sir. Thank you so much. Please come.
Good afternoon, everybody. Am I audible? There are also radio stations you quite see my members. And they also give me professional the organizers of this FTV document. We have to go with this team and I'm trying to for research. Not only perhaps to do very enjoy, I remember the study about self in biological conference. So I really wondered that what to go and what to do. But it's a very, very vast topic. In fact, the entire FDP could be focused on this. and there would be a series of lectures on it. So I mean, so I had a difficult choice, but I thought to share some of the basic things which are essential to you if you have to stay in academics, and what is important, what is not important, and what are the recent trends. So I shall be sharing some of these things over, over 45 minutes or so, which we have for the lecture. I'm also pretty excited by when I joined this session, the previous session, the last one, because AI is the real, everyone talking about AI and it was about the book side, and there could be again multiple, endless and thoughts and, what is it is, it's a whole lot of work, AI is so uncertain. Because I think now, especially to start with the schools, the teachers will be the first to lose the jobs. Because that is the kind of scenario that was, you're excellent. Tutorials have been run for the aim of making really understand every topic very well, very, very well explained. So we will need to find the teachers, ultimately, we have the MNC, we have the corporate firms, we have the other organizations where the jobs are being shunted. And I think teachers will not be an exception to it. So these are some of the things which I had in my mind I thought to share with you. So research publications in HEIs and in the country, that is the focus of my talk. So we have to publish. All of you are very aware of this. You meditate and disseminate our research output to the global community. And they also keep a record of our timeline, because if you are publishing something which is making a change in the current scenario, if it's a, landmarking contribution, making a change in our society, etc., then timelines are important, because if you're published first, you get the priority. The credit goes to you. If somebody published afterwards, then the credit does not go. Because once you compare the timeline, let's say on a topic, if you have 200 people who was the first one to work, so the original credit would go as per the timelines in the order where your contribution has been published. So very important to keep a priority, to have a priority. Supposing if you have read through research, which you think, of course, you read through research, you should try to publish at the earliest. You can, for instance, the journals also have the possibility of short communications. That is where, for instance, if you're not told the complete story, you can publish that contribution which you made in the form of a short communication. So that comes as a priority. So that can as well be done. So that there is important. And only research publications are validating your research. We are saying so things, but I think the content is validated. When it comes in the research publication with some journal, because we have a standard, supposed to be very standard system, it is rigorous process before your submission sees the light of the day. So it goes through various scrutiny points. So it is validation of what you have done, otherwise you can keep on talking. But if you not publishing the form of a research publication, it may not be interesting. And we of course have over 50,000 plus peer-reviewed journals. We have, to give you some statistics, over 3 million articles are published every year. So why it is useful after all, and why our research in academics, why it is useful in terms of, let's say, higher educational institutions. Because higher educational institutions primarily are into teaching, and research would help us learn our teaching curricula, our teaching pedagogy in a number of ways. For instance, we can build new subjects in the new areas. We can develop new models. We also, if you, have an extensive experience in research, you can also share your ideas when you are teaching. So it's not supplementing your teaching, otherwise you are just reading a textbook. But then you can also supplement it by your what is going on, what is the latest interpretation of that, topic which you are teaching, how you can give the history, how the topic was developed. So many things can be done if you have a background of research also. So you can create modules, you can, also you can, in your classes, you can also have the seminars on research papers. You can ask the students who will do the seminar on research papers, which can be assessed. And you can guide, PhD scholars, you can guide UG, PhD project dissertations, etc. So that has to be there. In fact, there would be a shift in terms of, let's say, if you talk of NEP 2020 and NEP to 1986, I think before that we had 1986 NEP. And there is a paradigm shift from, let's say, the conventional to research-oriented teaching. And there is a whole lot of emphasis. NEP 2020 inculcation of research right from the time of school. And in fact, therefore, for the UG program, for there is devoted to research. So many things are happening. So it's all in the background of NEP because if you see the prosperity of a nation, the prosperity index of a nation, you will always find it's related to research. Those countries which are more research heavy, which have a good research profile, usually you find that the prosperity index is also higher. So therefore, you have the countries which are very rich, they are very strong in research as well. So they both go together. So the government realizes this and has come out in the form of NEP 2020 that if India has to become a group power, then again it has to emphasize on research and therefore in conclusion of all the topics by the year 2022. So why in education I should do research? Because if I don't do that also. So the good quality research, supposing if I have to submit a research project, and if I am submitting a research project without any background, without any expertise in that area, without any qualifications in that area, the funding agency is not the same. They will structure you, provided you have to do yourself, and they are confident that you know how to complete that project. When you have, so many ideas, it doesn't get better. The funding agency will provide funding only if you have the proven expertise. So if you have proven expertise in research, then if you have a lot of things can happen. You can not only get R&D projects, also from the funding agency, different government or private agency, etc., etc. Or it helps you in all kinds of recognition. Because your real recognition is built by your research background, not by the number of years you spend in teaching. Because while you're teaching, if you have CV, can go on the question. For instance, 20 after 10 years, 20 years. Even one page to it can be 2 pages, 2.5 pages. That's all because we will see that I thought now for so many years when it was now 5 years, now 10 years, I thought 10 subjects at a time now I explain teaching subjects I have the 5 problems that I have 20 now to what extent you can do by way of your teaching. You'll see the different way that you see as handling projects. And if you have to some background, education also comes with invited from teachers here in the world. You can join the publication CV. So all those things are happening. You might building for your research contributions are primarily contributing to the recognition as well. And it applies what is, talks about, let's say, in terms of government, I think also a good background, was members. So, again, just and the time also include as well that work research, you know, not that how many, years of teaching. So, you can teacher, I mean, it's a fast but true. One has to be a wonderful teacher in this cycle. In the teacher, I problem is students who will not be there, who will not know the subjects. And then they become teachers, then you have a vicious cycle. It gets from bad to worse and so on and so forth. But nobody bothered. Your potentials are assessed. If you see the rules, how many awards we have from teacher, very few. In terms of the subjects, so many awards. So ultimately, there is no definition of research. There is no individual. And as much as we want to so we have to reiterate the option that we have to they are also important, so you need to know and other all the regional, science education or students or all the academic agencies, airlines, there it's a bulky, if you are in a university, it's a bulky research complement. Approximately, it will very say at least 20 to 30 points, which rankings will go up to 50. That is said that such a steps how to do track measurement by all rankings. So they go together because sometimes it's going to be something sometimes you think of this that as if teaching and they are on one end you teach, on the other you research. But they actually complement. Your research also enriches your teaching. So they are together, and that is reflected in other things which I just want to discuss what I'm contributing, and it's also the quote by the best research will give the best teaching, and the best teaching will give the best research. Generally speaking, in my experience, I have found that those who teaching, they are good researchers. There will be exceptions, and those who research are good teachers as well. I mean, that's my experience. At least mostly. I mean, there will be some exceptions. There will be excellent teachers without results, but it happens. Generally, there is a positive correlation. So now publish. It's a indicator of summary contribution, kind of summary requisite for funding, development for possible impact, career promotion, and it's all caring obligations. So what kind of obligations we have in research? Research targets, I don't think I need to explain, you understand very well. What is I just not one is is communication. So again, I don't think I need to explain to you. Scaling studies, respecting management cases study, book chapters, commanding positives, correspondence, that sometimes in journal also publish the correspondence that you want to make something noticeable to the community, to the research community, then you can just by writing the letter, then that will be published as letters to the editor or the correspondence, and that can be important thing. So all these kinds of contributions can be made by your research publications. We understand. Let's say if I talk of the quantity, we stand for global. But in terms of quality, it's not coincidence, it's different. We stand not only in terms of quality, I mean, quality, one down citations, that how citations or research is active. There is the quality. So, one parameter, and we stand in terms of disseminations. So we have to use that gap, So good quantity, but we are not very poor in quality. So our global contributions, let's say if I talk of the data of 2025, in terms of quantity is 5%, but we have as high as 20% rejections. That the paper published, journals asked you to retract it because it could not be verified, there could be other were falsified data, and number of reasons. And number one, in fact, China was number one in terms of interactions, if you talk of just 2-3 years ago. But now China has taken very, very strict policy against retractions. And whenever the retractions happen, generally the faculty members are terminated or some strong disciplinary action is taken. So it's very seriously viewed now, and therefore China has been able to do it. And therefore, we find now a much number of retractions in China. But unfortunately, India is not working, and I think we need to very seriously take them on with it. We have different development policies which are come out, Sri Lanka region also even regulatory policy, they are innovating those regulatory policy, and all institutions also. And it's very defined. And since they are certificated, all secretary members who are about it, well, respective of them from here or from other places. It's available in public domain, university website. For PhD also, we have put that policy in place, and we have to see that legal of the pluralism is within the limits of the UPC policy. So that is something where we need to be concerned. So the question is of quality research. It's not just one problem, but quality research publications. So where the public, that's a big question. Now, for instance, UPC came it has been disbanded in October 2024. It's permanently gone. Don't know that UGC will call in. It's not going to come because I had to attend for meetings with the chairman, Sri Lanka Commission chairman, so UGC secretary. And they do not propose to come out with any other UGC list. They said that universities on the can form associations or independently decide policy that these journals are important, these are not important. So UGC care is permanently disbanded, therefore, and therefore, the only option that we have is to publish in the indexed databases, and you are indexed only with 2. And if you are publishing there, it's fine. If you're not publishing there, it does not really matter. You can have 10, 100, 50, not a problem, no consequence at all. Either Web of Science or Scopes. That's the benefit. And only these 2, with UGC care job gone and going permanently, only these 2 will matter. They are important and they are counted in higher education, in QA rankings, in analytics, so we are counting all the gains and growth. So for any other place, or even if you are etc. And there could be digital form where you're doing it. So they will ask this Scopus index or Web of Science index, and if you know by default it comes you. You can say super so let it be. Question is unfortunate, or for whatever it is. I am not saying that we can judge all journals by that, but that is happening now. So whether Scopus or Web of Science, that's a full stop. So that one has to be very, very careful. And last point, of course, is very important. And I think there's a big touch upon, so I'll very, very quickly I'll tell something about it. It's very important. I'll not repeat those points which I think have been touched over. I think you shared some documents with me where you said that pre-entry levels have been taken care of. So I'll remove that and just focus on the more important things. So that is where we are. So Scopus, Web of Science and so on. And these days, you cannot complain. Because these are very, very comprehensive databases. Web of Science itself is a misleading term because everything information on science. No, it is a very, very comprehensive database. So it has, for instance, science, social science, other humanities, and suppose it's within 256 disciplines. And it has also the Science Citation Index expanded, SCIE, Social Science Citation Index, SSCI, Arts and Humanity Citation Index, CSCI, and Science Citation Index, ESCI, so, yes. So we have as the same way 3,000 and 3,500 of the selected operations for global reading some arts and journalism, more than 16,800 selected books and universities. So everything is now covered. We have to 5,000 conference processes which are covered into the science all the disciplines. It's a comprehensive database and same applies to Scopus. It's by Elsevier and it has close to 28,000 peer-reviewed journals and all disciplines, scientific, technical, medical, and social science, and important arts and humanities. So these two are very important. Some of this split up social science more than 12,000. So covering all disciplines, not just science, but all areas, all subjects. So that is what we understand children from I understand this. But today, if you interpret your selection is right, your science right, you will find suitable journals and opportunities and sciences as well from Web of Science and Scopus because they expand. This was not the case earlier. It's true if you look at the difficulties because that was not the case, but now you have coverage. So bibliometrics again, you are judged based on this, Again, bibliometry is something which is assessing your quantity, you see, not quality, but unfortunately but true. We don't live with it. So it's also calculated the journal impact factor. So impact factors because again they are very important and they are calculated by candidate. Because you have sorts of disciplining impact factors which are out. The focus on the top of the impact factor, index government impact factor, international impact factor, general impact factor, but the only acceptable impact factor is by candidate. And candidate is a 1,000 writers based company, around 1,000 writers, and it is using Web of Science index papers, Web of Science to retrieve and find out the impact factors. So this is important. So supposing, citations, for instance, defined by number of citations, the number of citations of a journal, if let's say 100, let's say 2026, there are 100. And in 2025, there were, let's say, 25 articles published, 2024, again, 25 articles published. So 50 published divided by total citations. It was 100. So previous 2 years, if I am in 2026, 2024, 25. How many research papers were published in those journals? And in 2026, how many citations? So 100, 25 plus 25, that is 2024, 25, 25 plus 25, 125 interfactors too. So this is very important, and that is the way to calculate the impact factor or the scientist score is another thing which one by scores essentially the same but 3 years. It goes back to 3 years. So in order to get 2026, we have to get 2023, 2024, and 2025. So that's for the scientist scores. These are very two common terms. It's another term, source normalized impact per paper. It is assessing the citations in the subject area. So it's not subject specific. That if I am of English, then how many English, I published a research paper in English, then how many, journals in English cited my paper. So subject specific, it's called a SNP. H index is again the volume of the number of the paper published as many times. So, sure. So H index of 15. So supposing if I have an H index of 50, that means I have published 50 research papers which have been cited at least 50 or more than 50 times. So that is the way H index, and G and I10 is the number of research papers which have been cited more than 10 times. So it becomes I10. So supposing I have an index of 194, 194 is a publication that is cited 10 or more than 10 times. So G index is again the square, that is, it gives weightage to more than 100 papers. So supposing if I have G index of 10, that means my 10 papers have been published 10 to the square. That means 100 times. So if I have 10 research papers cited more than 100 times, it becomes 10. So we have, cited half-life. Cited half-life means if I publish a paper, let's say in 2000, and we are in 2026. So in 2026, it has been cited, let's say 100 times. So mid of 2026, there is half-life, so 2013. So out of, let's say 100 citations which I have received in these 26 years, in 2013, if these were 60, there would be 20. So what is the cited half-life? So if the half-life, it peaks initially, later declines, or it is kind of consistent. So that means my research paper is consistent, it has been consistently quoted, it has relevance, 2000 research paper, year 2000 research paper, 2026, but it is still relevant, So if the cited half-life is more, then that means it is more relevant, it has lasted long, whereas it can have peaked relevance at that time and then gone. There is a sudden decline. So all these things are possible. All metrics, I think this has been probably talked about. That because these is very important now. That how many times your research has appeared in social media, how much time it has been talked about in blogs, and even TVs, and YouTube channels, etc., etc. So that is the way to assess the digital footprint of your research. So that is another, another way of finding the assessment, the contribution of research, and the company called as all metrics, which does it. You pay the money, they will find the metrics for X or Y or Z. So that is also because these are again very learning to be, you have to be savvy with the social media. You have to explain what you do. Again, important. At the same time, if your research is important, and naturally people will also pick up and talk about it. But at the same time, you should also be able to exhibit it yourself in different platforms. Be it LinkedIn, be it Facebook, be it Insta, be it some other platform. Advertise. You have to live with the changing time, So more about, I think, the obligatory and clone journals is very important because many of our students, for instance, I am in capacity of seen that many of our own PhD scholars have found graduate. Because they come out with journals which are index, but they are actually not. But they found they are trapped into it. So what normally it is that journal asks researchers from data, they will send you very 3 months. You publish with us, and send your paper. We process the research paper in 2 days, etc. So many things happen. So there are many things. They have no peer review system, not to a board, because their science, they find that they have maybe it's not missing at all, it may not be at all, And if it is there, then you get confused and their address cannot be correct. So they will not get through those. They don't know what we do. That is another problem. They will say 820,000, they will say that publication charges apply, and then you can negotiate. Again, I mean, it's not, you can negotiate. So it all depends on what their agents also working, that will contact you and will ask you that may udhar 25,000 मांग रहे हैं, 20,000 में करा, all sorts of things are happening these days. So the publication charges is not really article processing fee. APC, which is available on the website, even very good journals are going in for APC now, but that's open. But it's all hidden. And their contact email addresses are again non-professional, yahoo.com or gmail.com. And they publish in widely unrated area. Journal of Science, Humanities and Management. So you see, covering so many areas, generally the focus would be in one area. So think twice. If it is such a broad-based journal, think twice what it is. All journals may not be related at all with anything. For example, American Journal of Languages. Neither the publisher is from America, nor the HO is from America, but American Journal of Languages. So quite misleading. The country which they write is to attract America. So we are tricked. But it has nothing to do with that. So quite unrelated. So these are some of the tracks which you can be following into. And we have the automatic paper generators also. And many of some papers which has been created by the programs have been published in journals. Clone and is kind of overlapping. But clone, as you understand, is something which overlaps with the real journal. So you get confused. You get confused with the name. And the website also looks alike. So they create the same website, they publish the videos, they talk about the effect factor. Almost the same editorial, but minor mistakes, minor spelling mistakes may be there. So that they are not changed. You look alike, but you will not be able to, unless you're very, very careful, you may not be able to catch it and you can be tracked. So these are look alike. So they use titles, they are similar to respected journals, target journals that were previously active or indexed in databases, scope of web of science, but discontinued now. So again, you get trapped, So use videos on their pages. They work in the IPO related publications. They have come out with fake journal sectors in global sector, sector index company, and they are given to be able to give you the validated publication backdate. So for instance, a strength in a Scopus index and a strength research is the name of the journal. So unless you are careful, you will be trapped into it. So in order to something, so that is the way to operate. The two look alike. As you look at the definition, so look at it and you get confused. So then you should know that how to verify if some journals have been published. There is a directory of open access journals, TOAJ. And if the name is there, you can make out that yes, the journal is journal. It's a publicly accessible. It's not doesn't charge anything, public information free, public domain. So you can verify. And it creates a lot of harm in the journal publication because it misleads the community. And for instance, it is happening in some of the areas which are very, very critical for science. If somebody says somebody has not done the work and says I have developed cool vaccine or something like that. So it can do an immense harm. People can be, let's say, they can lose their lives for this. So it's a misleading research. People are misled in all areas. And also, it has very positive consequences, especially in certain areas such as medical science. But then, you have a pressure. So therefore, people go in for pre-entry journals in order to survive. So again, we have which of course is done with. But by and large, when universities have that requirement, so you find out it, your people wants recommendations to companies. So therefore, the need to qualification of agreement is also pretty obligation, but I repeat, as I said earlier, that they do not carry any value, big zero. You do not get any credit. So let's not go in for that. Quantity, number, etc. will not count in any consequential platform. In fact, nobody fooled these days, because before you enter in somebody's room, whatever tax was provided. Or if you go somewhere, you try to retrieve the data about that person through public platforms. So nobody can cheat. Those days I remember that you could people could say during my time that I am blah blah blah. But now you have to be who you are. The people will not be deceived because your entire house these things is everything important to you. So it doesn't really bring any credit if you publish Scopus or Web of Science or otherwise don't. I mean, this has been only talked about, so I'll not I'll just skip it, but I think, in connection also with AI, you have different kinds of coding. Without support. Error framing is again now is very popular but very dangerous. Changing your words but calling structure ideas. Self-algorithm, you know that you have taken something which you did earlier without quoting it, without giving the reference, or mosaic taking from multiple sources. Your detection tools, authenticate, turn it in, cross reference, similarity check, which is again a strong one of because have this cross reference. They are moving from this strong reference, similarity check, and when your paper goes there, they will first of all get it verified through this. So acceptable, similarly from those typical 15 to 20, it all depends on them. But generally, it is within that range. Never exceeding 20%. For PMT, UGC policies, over 20, result section only 10. Or maximum result section only 10. Literature, yes, again 20, because literature you collect from other sources, but it has to be cited. So there are different norms by different journals. And then one has to really see that what is real plagiarism, what is, fake plagiarism. Again, an issue, only learned person in that area can say that it is a real case of plagiarism. That somewhere result has been stolen or supposing some minutes stolen. So, okay, must have been so. You have to see the contribution, what area has missed, whether that is consequential or not. So there are many things into it. So journals look for all these things. That is the initial candidate percentage. But then they really look into it, what has been copied, what has not been copied, and then whether that is consequential or not. So many consequences. I think is even leading to jail, I think. Example, Rajasthan has gone in jail. Spend a day in or in national capitals. So everything. So just one or two cases. There were journals called as Bio Research Technology from one area. I think that sector around 6. Editor-in-chief, I will not name it. I will give the name. Editor-in-chief himself had as many as 43 retractions from that journal. Reason that to me, it comes as editor-in-chief, it comes to me. Then I send it for review, standard process. Reviewers come out with certain comments. I then have given it back to the audience. That revision should be done at that stage. I include my name also. Such cases. Number one, most of the papers had fallen in that category, that misusing the position of the editor. On the second, compromised reviewing mechanism. That I know okay, the form. So those things being done by a famous man, I would not name, you can Google it yourself, and 43 retractions. So imagine, one example, that's only example. So May 7, 2026, China's top university found a top cancer research ranking of Dean Francis to develop two additional points for any kind of promotion, funding and awards. The reason the study claimed that the starting cancers of the brain or what is not important. Out of the 15 figures which were given in that paper, 14 were they were manipulated because you can do a lot of manipulating. You know it well. You're using so many software. So please be aware of this. There are a lot of figures now by the Indian agencies also. So be very alert on these points. Let's not do it at all. Otherwise, you can be trapped and you can be you can attract any single action, And we in fact have there are cases of attraction which are nothing to, in fact, to me, some one of the members to the body, and some severe other conditions can be there because academic campuses we have zero tolerance. Objective to come to whichever campus they will come. So concluding in about another 5 minutes, I think I started it for another 5 minutes only. So, so this AI, I was quite prompted by the last slide, and in fact, you are aware there is a lot of talk about AI, and now we have LLMs, which you are aware. So they are capable of, let's say, producing the text, an interpretation of text which looks to be quite similar. The latest versions, for instance, Chat GPT 3.5, GPT-4, capable of generating human text with impressive fidelity accuracy, creating. So that's the big challenge. So generative AI, which we call it generative AI, then one is that whatever is felt, interpret it. What is that supplementing it based on the current knowledge? So it becomes generative AI. So exceptional capacity to assist time-intensive tasks such as reviewing prior research and analyzing data to increase adoption driven by pressures or publish or publish. So what are the possible legitimate uses of AI? For instance, if you are using for grammar language, especially valuable for native English speakers. But then the catch because you have the tools like Grammarly, and you have AI tools also which are doing it. So my recommendation would be that avoid use of AI tools, at least during the transition period. There the transition which is happening in the field of AI. So as of now, please avoid using AI tools for language. Because after all, anything which you are doing with the help of AI, it goes into the public domain. We do not have a confidentiality clause. Now, there are certain paid versions of AI tools where they enter into confidentiality agreement also. But as you are aware, we do not do that. We do not pay and buy the AI tools and then use it. Most of us, almost everybody, is using the free versions. So free version, there is no confidentiality. And it goes into the public domain. Any text which I could do, that. Where is the guarantee that any company will not train its employee based on their data or will not sell data to a third party? All those possibilities are open. So the moment you are putting your text in the public domain, because I'm, one case recently in Manchester, she, in fact, her original novel was found to be plagiarized, and when she paraphrased that novel, that was found to be original. So all those contradictions are there. Very recent case. She narrated her story, famous novelist from UK. So we are passing difficult times, but let's say paraphrasing and restructuring, I would not recommend. But people are using the journals also may not object to it. So for restructuring sentence for clarity or literature sourcing, isn't it? Because it saves time. Or figure captioning and abstract drafting. All these tools are available now. For instance, AI tools, the starting point is there. Reference managers, you can use Mandarin now. There's nothing wrong in that. So reference manager is acceptable because you are essentially not using it. Semantic storage, research, research, and so on. So it's time saving, of course, you are attracting. The tools are to improve language, grammar, and structure and consider assistive AI tools. Assistive AI tools, that's the definition, and do not require disclosure. In fact, this AI software which is available now by Anthropic, they use the plagiarized or copyright violated versions or books of a number of authors across all the worlds, across all the entire world, and from different countries. My two books, all two books, were also used by them. One was from Watney, other was from elsewhere. So a copyright suit, because when all these things came to light, a copyright infringement suit was filed against Anthropic. It's $1.5 billion, I'm saying, I repeat, $1.5 billion suit across the world. And, I was approached that, I was in fact by post also, because I received a foreign email. Airport sorry, suspicion about that they were happening a claim game to workers, the Sathi claim. So they are asking to file a claim. So, but again, repeatedly, twice or thrice, I received the email. Then I Googled it, it became clear to me there's a copyright infringement case in my two books. I have to file a claim, or my two books have been used by Claude for this. So then I filed the claim. 31st March was the last date for this year. So yes, I have to do books. So everybody would be compensated. Let's talk about the money. Because that is the way. So Claude, number one software Anthropic company, $1.5 billion, which is Google it, you will find it. And so rich, super rich, Anthropic, they can afford to pay $1.5 billion multiplied by 100. If you want to get in rupees, 150 billion rupees. 40,000, 40,000 crores. So enormously rich. Still, their shares are top high, and they are number one company. In fact, the software which was done by Anthropic, it was also used to precisely bombard the Iranian region. In fact, some of you might be aware because they collected the data of hundreds of thousands of the CCTVs to know the movements of the people. That's how they could come out. So you see, so all these things are happening. So just coming to close. So AI can also make mistakes. You should be aware they are called as data solutions. There are documented cases. ChatGPT providing inaccurate statements related to research subject areas as well as full accident topics in which there was no research. They showed so much research has been done, but no research. So there are key risks. You can get fabricated citations which don't exist at all. You got it through another. Outdated when you collect scientific information based on training data from us. It's because all depends. The output will depend on what has been used for training the AI. What data has been used? Be generated based on that data only. So if the data volume, 100,000 data volume is, let's say 1 million, 100,000, 1 million, or 1 billion, or 10 million, it all depends. The accuracy will depend on those factors. Then how much data has been fed into it. Then there is bias based on the data, what kind of data, and data confidentiality. Again, I talked about that. So where is the guarantee that they will not put in public domain? Ethical concerns. So journalists ask now mandatory disclosures, and it is used to publish figures and tables. They will be disclosed. And so if you're good for political directions, tax refinement or something, restructuring or necessary means that you do solely for basic spiritual or something is acceptable. Or reference. So these two things are acceptable. So there is consensus across all global publishers that naturally a country author, can disclose your views. The publisher journals are asking that you disclose, and global authors are fully accountable for all the contents. No sharing of the responsibility that somebody else did. I'm not responsible. You are responsible. If you are publishing a research paper, even as a co-author, you can't say, "नहीं नहीं वहाँ पे हुआ था मुझे नहीं मालूम." गलत कहाँ से? If you are sitting in a, if you are through some kind of promotion or any consequential process, and if you say this that no, I'm just a co-author, I'm not a no. You are supposed to owe that research publication to the movement. And you are very important. You are research. The other problem because some of the that we started to check the plagiarism, AI plagiarism in the PhD thesis. And we did to later, after about a week or 10 days, we had to withdraw it. Because the problem with the AI detection tool is that a lot of misleading information comes. At AUR, we had access to Turnitin. Turnitin detects both. That is conventional plagiarism as well as AI plagiarism. But Turnitin does not tell you the source. That AI, because conventional will give you the source, that this from that book, this from that paper, etc. etc. The AI detection is not telling you the source. But the improved version, for which we don't have access, but the improved versions do have. To tell you the source, for example, authenticate is again Turnitin, but improved version. Then give you the source. But that source again is misleading. Conventional 12%, AI 60%. So if you see the limitations of the AI detection tools, we are passing through a transition state, and they are not reliable. Even the companies which have come out with the best, AI detection tools, they don't claim it. They claim that our, detection, AI detection is liable to errors. And therefore, when you submit even in revenue journals, they ask you to submit declaration form. That I have not used AI, or I have used AI only for this, or I have used AI only for that. And like that, you have to write. So that is another that it is giving you false positives. They call it false positives. So future, of course, transition phase we are passing. So but a lot of companies are indeed who have come out with developing transforming research tools. For instance, we have Scope and CI. Here is some for research analytics, semantic scholar, insight, consensus, take power in literature, in power literature discovery. AlphaFold by DeepMind, which is a Google company, they have developed the predicting structure published in Nature in 2024. Nobel Prize was given for this purpose. So we have to keep pace with the technology. I'm not saying that, but cautiously. And for certain time in this transition phase, my own recommendation is not put your own text in public domain for even for paraphrasing, even for improvement, etc., etc. Otherwise, not blessing. So we have to be very, very careful for this. So AI should augment because a lot of questions are really not this. So reasoning, thinking, and accountability. So I think that is something I can speak good topic, but I know that limitations of my time, so I'll close at this stage. Thank you.
I think shortly is certification. Yes, ma'am. But before that, if there are any questions from the audience and maybe from online participants, okay.
You have received many questions.
I think there is something in the chat box.
Please go ahead.
So participants, if you have any questions, you may write it in, drop your questions in the chat box, or maybe you can raise your hand to ask personally. And those who are sitting here,
पानी देखे हैं, एक आदमी ने
please.
Thank you.
Please. No, no, those were just comments.
I've seen that somebody is writing that I cannot wait for service. That's from the audit. Audio put the audio, okay. No problem.
Can I ask you, what happened with the title, the period?
मुझे bottle
And what the name? He was president of the market interpretation of the also. So he is the one who doing the position. And extension has not been done. Extension was due in 2026. And how extension made it? Used to make it happen. Okay. Was constant about scientific. CSR के famous about it. Senior scientist, very famous scientist. मेरा नाम मिल गया तो ये very famous man.
So yeah, anyone interested in sharing their thoughts or maybe any reflections on both the sessions, you may share.
Life का achievement गए. पूरा life का achievement.
Was there anything done to prevent this kind of loopholes or editors can put in their next? नहीं वो reflect बार बार भी ये करेगा reflect करेगा.
Reflection मतलब because there,
Zero.
like yesterday, he was telling, it's with you and after you. It's a black spot.
That's what we have the contribution of it. Reflect means gone.
All right, so I think there are no questions. Everything is well understood. This is how I can interpret. So okay, why not? So many happy returns of the day. So so yeah, now it's time to propose a formal vote of thanks, or maybe the certification first. Oh, fine.
You can name, we can go.
Yes.
We and sir also. All four of us we can go. अब एक का नाम ले लो
The participants who have joined online will get an e-certificate in probably by the end of this month, and those who are present here will be receiving it in hard copy. So thank you so much for understanding this particular thing. Yeah.
Stop then we have the poster. And
Okay.
before that we.
Okay. As
Dr. Sachin Bansal.
Ask many questions. Sachin Bansal.
Dr. Deepak Kachot. Dr. Deepak is here? No? Dr. Pragya Sharma. No, there are two persons with the same name. Dr. Harshita Kumar. Dr. Nitin Garg.
Harshita.
Dr. Neha Khandelwal.
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Hemant Gupta. Hemant sir is here? No. Dr. Ankur Shukla. Dr. Abhishek Mendirata. Mr. Kapish Tasal. I gave it. Ankur Shukla. So now we have research scholars, Mr. Kapish Tasal. Kapish is here. Okay. Mr. Hemant Kumar. Mr. Rajneesh Kumar.
Hemant Kumar.
Miss Narmada Shyamala. Miss Prachi Lakhara. Mr. Khanvelkar Rahul Vijay Kumar. Mr. Puran Singh Rathod. He does this. Yes. Miss Pallavi Purushpani. Mr. Suraj Sundar Raman. Pallavi. Yes, ma'am, my scholar. Mr. Suraj Sundar Raman. He's not here. Okay. Rest of the certificates we will distribute later. So thank you so much for this.
And after that, no refreshment for. Not auditorium. We are going to the fire area.
So formally before that, I would like to say thank you to everyone. Like this one. Yeah. Next, yeah, please. Okay.
Just.
Everyone, please pay attention.
I thought I would take a moment to convey my own gratitude for the invitation extended to me to be with all of you here, to Dr. Deepa Chakravarti, convener and head, to Professor Barul and Dr. Gunjan, and to the Dean Research and to the co-convener from HR and AIU, who has been looking after all the proceedings. So it has been a pleasure to be with all of you. And I'm sure that you will be producing number of reflections, short papers, lengthier papers, all your scopus publication. And more than that, that you will be very committed teachers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't think so, but yes, just want to say that really the 5 days have been very enriching and had been a very great experience for teaching, learning, and research. And probably this tradition will continue. And next year we'll meet with chapter 2 of this FTP. So thank you everyone. Sure, ma'am.
So I want to thank both the coordinators
Thank you.
and a very sincere thanks. So particularly Dr. Gunja, Dr. Parul,
Thank you.
they really made it possible. Ideas can count, but to give a shape to it, you need, lot of soldiers, and they did play the role of the soldiers. So heartfelt love to both of you and to the whole department. So they work like one team,
Yes, ma'am.
and I really do not have to look back. I know this things will happen. Maybe right now it will take 2 more minutes, but it is going to happen, and it has happened. So I'm very, very happy. A big round of applause for both of them.
All the faculty members who support.
All the faculty members, in fact, those who joined offline, online, and of course, Akshat is the pillar. Maybe he can go away, but we will not spare today.
And Ankita.
Ankita, yeah. So the entire team, it's a collaborative effort, and the collaboration worked out very well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Yeah. So we'll have a group photo and then.
Okay, thank you so much, participants, for your august presence today for all the 5 days. So we'll be sharing the certificate soon with you. Till then, thank you so much, and we would love to receive your feedback in the feedback form and also on the group. So thank you so much. Take care and have a wonderful day ahead. Thank you. Thank you.